Hi, this is our second discussion on strings. I decided to make a second video on strings because they're so important. Booleans, uh, strings, and numbers make up the vast majority of structures that will be used in programming. We're going to talk about some static functions and why they're static. We're going to talk about the contains function. We're going to talk about escape characters, and I'm going to wrap it all up. So a string is a type. We know this. It's kind of like int. It's the type of variable you're creating. Here's an example where I create a value of type string and assign it hello world. If I didn't assign it the value of hello world, it would be implicitly null. But here I explicitly assign it a value, so it's hello world. Strings have numerous static functions. A static function is something that can be accessed in an object like string when you don't have to create an instance of that object. So I don't have to create my value to get the static function uh, that I want to use. Let's look at some of what static functions are. Some of the ones that you'll use a lot are string.empty, string.copy, is null or empty, is null or whitespace. I use null or whitespace a lot. And string.format. So is empty is the equivalent of just opening and closing a quote, putting nothing in between it. It's a string, but there's nothing in it. It's absolutely empty. There is a difference between a null value and a string. A null means there's no memory. It's not pointed to anything in memory. A empty string means that there is space reserved in memory for it. Copy function. The copy function will take a variable and copy it into another variable. In the example, I created my string 1, assigned it hello world, and then I use string.copy to copy it, my string 1 into my string 2. Now my string 2 holds hello world also. Is null or empty? This is very useful. It tells you if the string that your variable that you're passing is null or is it empty. It returns a boolean, true or false, 1 or 0, transistor. So in this example, I create a string variable named value, but I don't explicitly give it a value, so implicitly it's null. So when I use string.null or empty, it's going to return true. And is present will have the value true when this command is executed. Well, if I explicitly say it's null, it's still going to return true because is null or empty returns true on nulls. Well, if I give it a single space in quotes, well, now it's not empty. But if I had given it no space in the quotes, it would have returned true. If I give it an A, well, A is a character. Any characters including white space will return false. Is null or white space is very similar to is null or empty. It has one big difference, and we will get to that. The example still holds true. If I create a value, don't explicitly assign it a value, implicitly it's null. So in this case, is null or white space is true. If I explicitly say it's null, it's still true. Well, if I gave it an empty string or a string that is one space or it has no spaces, well, that's considered white space. Even an empty string is considered white space. So it's going to return true because there's nothing in it but spaces. However, if I give it a legitimate character, anything other than a space, it's going to return false. Contains. Contains is not static. You have to create a variable to get contains. It's Boolean. It returns true if the string contains the search variable. So here's an example of contains. I create a variable called value. I assign it hello world. And then I ask value if it contains the word world. And it returns true. Now, do note that this is case sensitive. If I had used a lowercase w, it would have returned false. String.format, we've seen this. We know that it's very powerful. So we're going to go through this real quick. You have two variables, a first name and a last name. First name is John, last name is Doe. Well, you want a sentence that says, my name is the first name, then the last name, no matter what first name and last name is. It could be Cheryl Johnson. It could be Lacey Henderson. It could be Frederick Douglass. You want the same result every time, so you use a formatter. Well, the only difference in the format of every sentence is the first name and last name. So the first part of string.format, the first variable, and the variables are separated by commas, is the format you want to print out. Every variable after that is a variable you want to place into the string. In this case, the curly braces indicate the numbered variable after the format that you want to place in the string. Remember, everything starts with a 0. So 0 lines up with first name, 1 lines up with last name. Also notice there's a space in between the curly braces with a 0 and the curly braces with a 1. That will also appear as the format you wanted to print. So after the commands are executed, what you will see is my name is John Doe. You've seen this in the numbers exercise you just finished. Escape characters are very handy. It allows you to inject instructions that the UI or other parsers understand and can handle. Examples, returns, tabs, and they usually start with a slash. Here are some very common escape characters for a single quote, a double quote, uh, a backslash, a backspace, a form feed, uh, a new line, a carriage return, which is also considered a new line followed by a carriage return is called a new line carriage return, and a horizontal tab. All these are very important when printing and parsing data. So here's an example of an escape character. You said string, the variable name is name, and you said John slash R Doe. When it prints out, you'll notice that John and Doe are on different lines. Well, what if I said John slash T Doe? Well, now you're saying that I want to put a tab between John and Doe, and the UI will display John with the appropriate amount of tab space, Doe. Well, what if I put a double slash and a T? Well, what you just did is escape the escape character. Now it'll print out John slash T Doe because now it no longer recognizes the backslash T as tab. What if I wanted to put John Doe in quotes on my UI? Well, now you have to escape the quotes. So you have to use backslash quote on both sides of John Doe. So we talked about some useful static functions. Most of them are Booleans. Same thing with contains. And we went and looked at a formatter again. And we looked at escape characters. All of these are useful. You should study and probably watch this video several times, taking notes for in your notebook so that you can have examples of all of these. We will have a exercise using strings at a later date. Thank you.